What's up, my folks? I hope everyone is doing good. Had a question asked me if I still had Buster. Yeah, take him on his little morning walk. Old man didn't go in and take his nap. Keep him inside. He's still producing shit. I'm still getting puppies off this dog. I'm gonna keep him healthy as I can. But yeah, he is getting old. His back end's about gone. That's the first thing they do. You see how they start going, back end goes out on them. But and he has little troubles, but he's still getting along and he can still breed. So I'm gonna ride it out. I've been trying to space his breedings out, every few months where he can get strong sperm up. And I've been feeding him well and taking him to little morning and evening walks and afternoon walk. But yeah, he's still around. Still this old thing. But anyway, I had a question on an email about what the worst thing I ever seen in dogs was. And man, I've thought about that shit for 2 days. I've seen a lot of pretty rough shit, but I couldn't get it out of my head and I explained what it was. You new guys getting in, I know a lot of you guys are getting property right now, man. And y'all are saying, man, that's awesome. I'm so glad for you guys, man. I'm real congratulations on it. Now, there's been several of you guys. I'm glad you're doing that. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? But the worst thing I ever seen in dogs, and y'all might take consideration of this, setting your yards up and all, was a young guy. I was young. I met him. He come up on my porch one day, and what do you got going on with your lead there? When I got home from work, I was about 21. He was sitting on my porch, and I didn't know who it was, and I walked up and he introduced himself, and it was actually Terry Drigger's nephew. And Terry was a cool motherfucker, and I was like, hell yeah, and we ended up becoming really good friends, like for like a year, we were real good buddies. And he had some dogs. He had a dog off Smoking Joe that we worked with, and he was a bad son of a bitch too. He had real potential. This guy's yard was all stacked with real potential. And I guess I gave him 3 that were about 8 months old, and he had about 2 or 3 older dogs and about 3 more that I think he just got from his Uncle Terry. And we had been good friends. We got along good. He was a good dude, man. He was trustworthy. He had a good job. He was young. He had a place right down the road, 2 miles from me. That he was buying. He was just, it was a good relationship with good buddies, And one day, I didn't even know what was going on. Somebody come down and told me that his dog had killed a little girl. Now, you know how everything goes, and there was law and everything else there. Now, he had a straight dog yard, you know what I mean? He was a up and coming dog man. He had a lot of potential, and he had come home from work. Now, you got to understand his place, how it was back then. It wasn't developed, you know what I mean? Then there was no neighbors next to him. He had a big swamp on one side where you could shoot ducks out of it. You know what I mean? They would fly in on it. It was that big. And behind him was a big drain and a swamp. Y'all can watch Buster take a shit. But, you know what I'm saying? For probably 10 acres straight through was nothing but swamp. You know what I mean? And then there was a place on another road on the back behind him. Never knew them, nothing like that, Never went by there, see what they, They were a long ways away, At least through the woods, probably a good quarter mile through the woods, And his dog yard, he had a trailer set up, long ways, and from the sides of his trailer to the sides of the tree lines, he had privacy fence all the way. And, you couldn't really get around it. He had it stacked up in there pretty good, and you could only come in basically through the back side of that swamp, Well, he had come home from work one day, and he went out to check his dogs, like every dog man does. And he thought it was a toy or something, I think he said. But anyway, this little girl was rolled up in a chain in the doghouse. One of them dogs. She had come through the woods. She was 3 years old. Her crackhead mama was at a house, which was a crack house. We didn't know nothing about it. I think that shit was big back then, And She was a fucking crackhead, not paying attention to her little baby. The little baby got off and wandered and got in that swamp and ended up in that yard. There wasn't one bite mark on that dog. I mean that baby. Not one. Not one bite mark. The baby probably, they said dehydration and bruising, from being wrapped up in the chain. It was only like a 6 or 8 month old puppy that did it. It wasn't one of the ones that I gave him, thank God. I mean, and it didn't make no difference. It didn't matter who gave it to him, But as you could all imagine what the news went with, back then, Mr. Driggers was in the news a little bit, and they made sure that everyone knew that he was a nephew of him, and that these dogs, talked shit about the dogs and all, but there wasn't one bite mark on the child. They never mentioned that. They bound down this poor guy, and this guy was a straight cat, and he did what everyone else would probably do. Imagine coming home. He had children that age, you know what I'm saying? Which we don't know exactly how it worked out, but that's what happened in the long end. But he did what he imagine coming home and finding that shock, that terror. And he went ahead, he put every dog down, not knowing where the child come from. Now there ain't no neighbors for a fucking half mile on each side. You forget about the crack house through the woods fucking quarter mile away. You know what I mean? Through a swamp. You don't think of that shit. And he put every dog down and called somebody, and they found out it all went out, and then, man, it was a blow up, and it was terrible, and it was probably the worst thing I've ever seen happen in dogs. And the dude was a good guy. I mean, he just, and he don't even want to look at a dog no more. He didn't even come around me no more. You know what I'm saying? I understood it completely. You couldn't even think about it. You know what I mean? But that's the worst thing I ever seen in dogs. And that shit was preventable from the mother's end, but of course they didn't blame her. They blamed the dogs and the man that had that's how it went, the blame kind of place. But I don't think he got in no trouble or anything really. He might have a little bit, but he got out of it. I seen him a year later. Come on now. But yeah, it was a terrible thing. It was probably the worst thing I've ever seen happen in dogs. Stupid shit happens in these dogs all the time, but that's usually two dumbasses fucking playing a game with each other, and one been out of shape, and somebody gets their feelings hurt, and then violence happens. But for the most part, it's all been good. But that's the nastiest, heartbreakingest, wrenchingest shit I've ever seen in the dogs. But what's the worst thing y'all have ever seen? Leave it in the comments. I'd like to know if anyone can top that one, because I mean, to me that would be the worst fucking feeling thing in the world, you know what I mean? But anyway, think about that, guys, when y'all are setting your yards up. You know what I mean? If you got access where kids can get in there and shit, think about that shit, man. But y'all take care, and y'all keep on bulldogging.